ride this morning. Alright, so hopefully you can hear me in this microphone. So yesterday I actually went out, before I put the exhaust on, and tried to do a ride review video, and I thought the mic picked up the audio good, but it ended up not. It's very crackly and just the audio is just awful. So we're gonna redo a portion of that video to give you a good understanding of what you're getting into if you get this bike. So we're gonna do like a little ride review type video. So we're going to be going through just breaking down some of the different ride aspects of this bike and kind of how it handles, how it functions on the road, and some of the just overall attributes that it has. So just right off the bat, this bike is amazing. I couldn't recommend this bike more. And honestly, I don't have one bad thing to say about this bike. I've been trying to come up with things that I don't like about this bike, and honestly, I just can't come up with really anything, and that's pretty crazy. I mean, maybe the shocks in the rear are a little stiff, but other than that, I mean, honestly, I'm trying to find things to come up with for this bike that maybe we can call it a con, but I just can't. I mean, it's just a flawless bike in my opinion. I mean, it sounds good with these pipes on it too. Check out my video installing the GP Shorty exhaust on this thing. I mean, so far this thing just sounds great. But anyway, we're gonna get into this video and give you some aspects. So I guess we can talk about the throttle on this thing. This electronic throttle that it has is crisp. I mean, it reacts quick. I mean, there's no delay in it. It sounds good. I mean, with these pipes, obviously. But even with the stock exhaust on, it made it sound pretty good. But I like how it's not cable actuated. You know, this bike kind of brings everything into that modern dimension. Like the Sportster and stuff like that, it's still got all that old type of equipment and everything on it. The only thing I wish this thing did have, and we'll talk about it when we get to the instrument cluster, is a fuel gauge. There you go. I mean, you see the acceleration, and I'm just barely getting on it too, because we're still in that break-in period, and I don't want to go through and just hammer this thing. So we're still kind of just easing on it. You know, during the break-in period, they say before 300 miles, you really don't want to go more than quarter throttle. And then after 300 miles, you really don't want to go above half throttle. So we're really trying to stay within those parameters. But I just can't believe how smooth this bike is. You know, I've rode a lot of Sportsters. I've rode the Yamaha Bolts, the Shadows. And honestly, this bike is just way smoother than those bikes ever thought about being. This engine just runs so smooth. If you've ever rode a Sportster at highway speeds, you know that thing is just gonna rattle you off the seat. There's just so many vibrations that it's just ridiculous. You can't really... It's just hard to do anything with all the vibrations. So let's talk about the suspension, I guess, since we're on a really bumpy road right here. So I have this set up for a passenger, so I've stiffened up the rear just a little bit. But overall, the suspension isn't that bad. I mean, you can deal with it. If you're into a bike like this, where it's like a bobberish style bike, you're not gonna have a problem with it. You're not wanting that plushness of a huge road glide or a big bagger bike or something like that. You're not even looking at that kind of stuff. This is the bike that has got that aggressive styling. it's for that aggressive rider that's not into that plushness, so you don't really need it. So don't expect that. It only has like an inch of travel, even though on the website it says 2 inches of travel. I'll tell you right now, there's not 2 inches of travel left on that, left in that shock, because I measured it. I think the aftermarket shock that they make comes with 2 inches of travel. All right, well, let's talk about the brakes. So the rear brake, I can't complain about the brakes at all. The front and rear brake are both just great. I mean, this one has the ABS. I strongly suggest getting ABS because I think it just, I don't know, it's just an added feature that I think a lot of bikes should come with, because you just never know if you have to lock the brakes or something like that and do a really quick stop. You just never know, and you kind of want that extra forgiveness and extra braking power. So definitely get the ABS model. And I know it's a few more bucks, but hey, it's going to be worth it in the long run to just go ahead and spend that money. So yeah, the brakes, no issue with the brakes. They're great. Let's talk about the ergonomics on this thing. Ergonomics are fantastic on this Rogue model, and I've rode the Bobber as well, and I'll tell you, the Rogue is in a different category than the Bobber entirely as far as comfort goes. Look at these mini apes. I would say they're about 8 to 10 inch mini apes, and they're just fantastic. They really, I'm around 5'9", with like I would say a medium-sized torso and shorter arms, and my arms are pretty much straight out and onto the bars right here, which gives you really good control, and it's just a really nimble feeling bike. So the mini apes are just excellent, put you in a really good seated position, and the seat that comes on this thing, the solo seat, I think is just awesome. I mean, I did change it out for the Syndicate seat, because I do plan on riding a passenger, which we're also going to do a video riding around with my wife on the back of this thing, which we've had a couple times already, and she enjoys it. There's no issues with her riding on the back of this thing. So, you know, you can do 2-up riding. It's no problem for this Indian Scout. So I've heard a lot of people say that the solo seat that comes on it isn't as soft as they'd like, but I mean, I can't imagine it being any softer. I mean, it's a sporty style seat. I mean, it has that really aggressive back structure on it, so when you romp on the throttle and stuff, you know, it's going to keep you in the seat. You're not going to be sliding off the back, which you have no issues staying in the seat on this thing because of that ridge on the back of it. So I like the seat. I mean, even the Syndicate seat we're going to do a review of, and it's awesome as well. So either one, you're not going to have any problems with. So the ergonomics are just great. And don't let me forget the forward controls on this thing. This thing has forward controls on it. So right there is going to save you a ton of money in having to purchase some forward controls. Once again, I'm 5'9", and these things are just comfortable as can be. Really very, very natural feeling as far as, you know, the placement and everything. Listen to this thing, man. This sounds awesome. All the way down to first gear. Sounds great. Go around this little pile of gravel. That's up to 60 in just no time, and that's not even goosing it. That's taking it easy. So if you wanted to really get on this thing, I mean, this 100 horsepower, you can really tell it has 100 horses because it can really put it down. So that's one thing. If you're looking at the 60, you know, I would just say, unless you don't really want as much power, then just go ahead and get the bigger one. You're going to be glad you did, and you're not going to have to second guess yourself as to if you bought the right one, because you're not going to have that in the back of your mind, man, I bought the small bike, I should have bought the bigger bike. You just went ahead and got the bigger one, paid I think like 12 to 1500 bucks more, which, I mean, in the real scheme of things, what's that, just a few more payments? I mean, come on, get the bike you want. Unless you ride both and you're like, hey, you know what, the 60 is for me, then go for it. You know, I'm looking at getting my wife a bike, and she's looked at the 60. You know, it might be a better bike for a female if they're getting into bikes for the first time. So you never know. It has its place for everyone. But nonetheless, the Indian Scout is just an awesome bike, where you go with the Bobber or the Scout. And I mean, I guess we need to backtrack. So, you know, I mentioned previously that I rode the Bobber and the Scout 60, and I went going with this Rogue, the full-size Rogue. But the Bobber, in my opinion, yeah, it's got the same motor and everything, but the ergonomics are completely different. The Bobber, you're leaning forward more. It's got that exaggerated Bobberish stance to it. So you're leaning forward. You're not going to be as comfortable on the Bobber. I'll promise you right now, you're not going to be as comfortable. It's going to put a lot more strain on your back. But hey, if you're used to riding sport bikes and things like that, where you're hunched over anyway, then go for it. You know, the Bobber is a big selling bike too. It's this place for everybody as well. I just think the Scout Rogue, in my opinion, just looks a lot better as far as styling and everything. It has this club style front quarter fairing on it, which doesn't really block any wind. I'll tell you right now, it just doesn't block anything, but it looks cool as hell. So if you're into that kind of styling, go with the Rogue, man. I'm telling you, it's a good looking bike. But I guess we can talk about the instrument cluster. Very, very basic. One thing I wish it had, like I mentioned earlier, is a fuel level indicator, because this thing only carries 3.5 gallons, well, 3.3. And I wish it just had a fuel indicator, which it has a low fuel indicator, but that's all it gives you. So if you're wanting to know what level you're at, sorry, this one don't have it. And when you open up the fuel tank, you can't really see the level of fuel either. It's got like a little cover there to kind of mitigate the splashing and stuff like that, and you know, shaking around and stuff while you're riding it. So don't expect to be able to see it either. But nonetheless, you got like a 50-mile range after your indicator light comes on to where you can go fuel up. So not too bad there. 50 miles, that should get you to a fuel station. Old school analog speedometer on it. You can change your thing to RPMs here. There's a little selector up here on the clutch lever. So you can have your voltmeter there. You got your mileage indicator. It's got a clock. It's got your trip. And then back to RPMs. That's all it gives you. Very, very basic, but it gets the job done if that's what you're looking for. So there we go for the instrument cluster. The mirrors right here. I kind of like where the mirrors are. It's funny, when I purchased this bike, they had them in the upright position, which is not how this bike is supposed to come. It's supposed to be down like this, not... I guess we'll turn right. So the lean angle on this thing, you saw me lean into it pretty hard right there. I just want to show you, and I still didn't scrape. I haven't had any problems. You know, I went out yesterday and we actually did some highway road stuff and did some twisties, and I still didn't scrape any. So it says it has, I think, a 27 or 29 degree lean angle, which this bike is pretty low. And these pegs right here, I mean, they stick out pretty far. But I haven't had any issues yet. I'm sure if you really aggressively leaned in on something, then sure, you're probably going to rub. But that's just something you're going to have to watch out for. And this thing just sounds good. Really good with these shorty exhausts on it. So the clutch is really nice. I think it's a little stiffer than some, but I kind of like that. And I think the friction zone is about halfway through the range of travel on this one, at least. And I'm sure that's subjective depending on what bike you're riding. But the clutch is really nice on this thing. It shifts really smooth. The forward controls are really nice. I like the placement. And the brake placement's really nice. Just wish this right would turn green. Alright, I'm going. Things won't turn for a long time. They're not on a sensor. Yeah, so I don't know if there's anything really else to talk about. I mean, the power output of this thing, if you're looking at, I guess, comparing it to another bike or something, I've rode the Bolt R-Spec, which has that 950cc engine, and the full-size one like this, it has that 1133cc 69 cubic inch motor on it. That's what this one is. And it's just night and day difference. I'm telling you, there's no comparison to the Bolt. The Bolt feels cheap. Honestly, I was going to purchase that bike, but I'll tell you right now, some of the reasons I didn't. So I got out the door, and this is 2023 model. Got out the door at like $16,000 with this thing. So advertising price on this when I walked in the door to purchase it was $13,100. So after they tag on all their stuff they tag on, you know, I financed it was like $15,500 or something like that, which wasn't too bad, I didn't think. And I did a lot of shopping around. I did a lot of haggling and stuff like that too. So I thought it was a pretty good deal. But with the Bolt, that thing was right around 10 grand out here in New Mexico. And then at 10 grand, adding another $1,000 for an exhaust system, you're looking at 11,000. Forward controls for the Bolt, because they don't really make a lot of aftermarket parts for the Bolt anymore. The aftermarket kind of just dropped off for it. So forward controls, I think I found a set for like $400. Then you have to go through and install it, or have somebody install it for you. And if you want to do mini apes like this, I mean, that right there is going to be probably another $200 for the bars, the extended controls and everything for it, like the clutch lever, or the clutch line, the brake lines and all that. You're going to have to get extended ones, and that right there is expensive. So you're probably looking at another grand for the controls, like you already come stock with on this one. The Honda Shadow Phantom 750, I looked at that one, rode it. It's a good bike, but it just feels cheap. The fenders and everything are plastic on it. Has a lot of plastic components, and you know, the 750 motor just doesn't have a lot of power. So if you're looking at getting something that has some good styling, you want a lot of power, just go ahead and get the Scout. This thing will not disappoint you. I'm telling you, this thing is just an excellent bike. Alright guys, so that's just me rambling. So hopefully you liked this video. If you did, please like and subscribe. Check out all my other videos on this Rogue. We're going to be doing a ton of videos on this Rogue because it's just that great of a bike, and it's going to give us something to do some more reviews and stuff and show you what you're getting into. This thing is awesome, guys. So we'll catch you guys later. Y'all have a good one.